Really, nice. It was intimate. It was also elegant as well. Your introduction. I would say, yeah, I am. I would consider myself down to earth. But I guess it's a matter of perspective. So I'm taking right now a workshop on Jack Spicer's Magic Workshop, and we've been the leader of the workshop. She's been doling out cards to people in a random order, and I guess the ones that were given to me were the Magician and the Nine of Cups. So I don't really know a whole lot about tarot, but it seems to me that if you looked at it from an archetypal perspective, maybe those things are more about manifestation of, trying to, we're not really trying to, but allowing the will to kind of manifest itself either, in my view, it's on the page, where that can really take place. And so, yeah, I think that in other ways, I think the other week, the instructor said something about the Nine of Cups being the party animal, which I don't really know much about it, but it's not true. I did have my partying days are behind me, I guess, but not really, but sort of. But anyways, I'm going to start with a sequence of poems that I started about 3 years ago, since the last book that I put out. And I would just sometimes Facebook gives you like these reminders of what you posted a few years back, and so I was looking at something that I had written on Facebook about films that were interesting to me, just little doodlings of films that I thought were kind of interesting, and I didn't really think about it at the time, but now, about a few years later, I've taken up a kind of a sequence of poems about films that were interesting to me. And so the title of this manuscript is tentatively called Film Studies. And so I'm going to start with a couple sonnets. And so I came upon the sonnet form kind of by accident, just messing around. I didn't really intend to say I'm going to, write. It just happened, that I wanted to write a sonnet in this form. And so these are the couple sonnets that were picked up by the Chicago Review a few years back on their online website. Okay. Paul Valéry published sparingly, then quit writing poetry altogether to study how the mind works. For 20 years, he explored the difference between Pushkin and Lermontov. In Russia, Pushkin is the sun, but Lermontov is nearer to the moon. Tolstoy's War and Peace was a meteor that fell into mid-century Europe. I prefer to sleep rather than to read. If I wiggle my toe, an entire foot crescendos. In the room where women come and go, Chagall chat, just autumn and endangered candles share queer snow. This next one was a sort of a follow-up to that sonnet, and it has a little bit of a backstory. A while back, because I live in New Jersey, in central New Jersey, there was a kind of a organization called Writers Anonymous. It was not like a 12-step program or anything, but it was more like maybe it could have been, I guess. I'm a writer, that kind of thing, But I had a friend that we met, that I met in that organization group meeting, and we would sometimes, he was a librarian, he kind of also convinced me to apply to library school, which I did, and I got in and I did that, but I'm not really a librarian by trade, but I went to library school for the vocabulary. That's basically what I did. But anyways, he and I had a conversation afterwards, and he said, it would be great if I could write a sonnet called Sonnet 8.5. And so I kind of mulled over it for a few years, and I thought, well, I could do this, and so I did. Okay, sonnet 8.5. A figure ends each of Mastroianni's scenes, implying a fatal fluency. Everything he saw, he drew toward and into himself. It was not really a question of pointing to a realistic reproduction of ennui represented in the film about which one could have many reservations. In this matter of the visible, everything had a cost, and in a strange way, so did standing in for Federico Fellini's sexual fantasies. What truth did he embrace in those few moments of clarity? When he hit snags in his writing, did he bury his disappointment in work, abandon himself in crowds, take up a team sport? Okay, the next, I have been working in a kind of form, like it's one thing that Matt and I perhaps share as an interest in, not really strict form, I would say, but I don't really work in strict form, but I do work in form, and I find it interesting to see what kind of the constraints that allow me to work in different ways. And so this one is a sestina, and it was sort of a collaboration sestina. I don't know if you've ever done that, but I had also a friend who had, and my friend Lorraine and I collaborated on this one, and it's crazy because it can drive you crazy, right? This is a very, this is the only one, very few ones that that actually worked out for me, I think. But it was a collaboration, and that was in the spirit of collaboration. Lorraine pitched me the words that I was going to work with, and then I ran with it, and then she also contributed 3 of the stanzas. Okay, so this is called Sestina, Homage to Franz Klein with Lorraine Lupo. During the holidays, when insanity runs rampant in the family, a slip of the paintbrush could reveal white on black colored canvases. The painter, Franz Klein, got this inside tip from Clem, who, pointing to a black dog-eared phone book, said, "You should plant your flag here." A rose is an insignificant plant to a dog unless another has pissed on it. But in the long run, people will go crazy making plans because dogs don't know what's good for them, and the painters are no different. Will the dog be whistled inside or stay put? The cans on the shelf were varied in color. I looked at them for a while, but I'm colorblind. Logic didn't help. I know that a plant is green because you said so, but inside my head isn't your purview just because you run this joint like a Warhol factory. The paintings are ugly, but who will let out the dogs? Visions of grandeur dog my waking moments. They are technicolored, like the department store, painted to be painted over like a row of plants. Then the spring rain shower runs all over the street and all the children go inside. Must I be forever kept inside? A dog cannot lie, neither can a dog be sincere. My Springer Spaniel loved to run and leap up in the fields. He was colored black and white. The fragile fern plants wrapped the pavilion. Now my painting is dry. I'll put it on the painting pile. Should I burn it or take it inside? Still it rains. Even the plants are tired of it. I towel off the dog. I know it's not true that the color red makes the bull run. Inside the rundown building, painted sandstone green, broken colored glass, dying ficus plant smell of a wet dog. I workshopped that poem once, and somebody said the dog did a lot of work in that poem. Maybe it's true. I don't know. It seems like it is, but all right. All right. This one is called "The Lady of Shalott," after Tennyson's "The Lady of Shalott." Nearly everything that passed through my hands at the Lady of Shalott Cafe has slipped away, including my waiter, who is abstractly preoccupied by how little time there was. A lady drops her napkin, or more accurately, she throws it down, complaining to the waitstaff that she prefers a less despairing cup, one commemorating her birthday rather than one broken and pieced back together again. What is that green afro of broccoli but a siren's whistle? another quiet loneliness? And if there was alien life out there, would our experience resemble the sprig of asparagus? What is a brain but a muddy, squishy lake bottom pushing up between the toes, the tangy minerality of dried aged beef, and all the flavors commingling? One can only hope to make it out of this sentence on one piece, sick as I am of fastidiously minded details, such as lobster as the gristle of the sea. I order the lamb glazed with mint jelly and jars of quince from which the delicious green tartness has trickled away. Another spirit olive in my martini to top it off. As Beethoven composed an edifice of sound, so too could I describe how the meat looked on a plate, juices flowing, and how it all comes together with some crunchy shallots on top. So I was kind of also had in mind the food critic Pete Wells in this piece. So I kind of, as a kind of a homage to his food critic writing or whatnot. All right. Now I'm going to move into a few different other film pieces. Contempt. The stiffening of egg whites in the morning, my contempt for the world is worse than hunger. After a long night of Chet Baker, deep in a dream, it's as if I could whittle a woman down to a scent by lingering in the fabric of her dresses. An example of how the fold occupies a very marginal place in the mind of the public can be seen in the lovely short film by Kenneth Anger called Puce Moment, which captures two principles of avant-garde film. The frame structure bears the central conceit, and what covers or conceals is also that which separates or moves between the facade and the closed room. The sudden greenness of a perfume bottle is intricately folded into form like glass origami. You know what? I think it'd be easier to just do the phone, you know. I'm just going to whip out my phone here. And let's see. Find my place. Okay. Meshes. Is Meshes of the Afternoon about a renewed lease on life, amnesia, or film noir about a murder? Very mysterious. What has no history lacks interiority, articulated as terror, moments of gravity, the language of cinema, or the motion of a woman running up the stairs of a house. The exposition of the film displays the lens as a hooded timekeeper with a mirror for a face. Passages of time confined to Sunday morning. The afternoon proceeds as a juncture of collapsed roots, my clean-shaven face reflected in the shards of a mirror, a quick study of arrows spelled backwards. Elsewhere in this noir, a man-eating beast roams the city, preying upon coffeehouse Kierkegaards and ecstatically articulate bums. Often it feels like I'm filling a dead man's shoes. I say, twist the knife and leave those pests crying crocodile tears. I record the noise of a car speeding across a bridge, a gunshot, a blowout, and the crash of the car into the canal below. The Odessa steps and its descendants. Eisenstein's montage of attractions on the steps, a panicked crowd, a gunfire, and a runaway baby carriage. Just as pressed flowers mummified spring and summer, the Odessa steps will outlive all our triumphs. An oral history of our time, its ocular O's, looks very much like a pair of broken glasses on the bloodied face of the woman. We are outliers, disconnected from each other, buying trinkets to give our lives significance, our visages flattened and pressed into books. The modernist sensibility is pain, the terrible object or analysis of terror, death raised to the level of sustained attention. Samuel Barber's adagio for strings and me staring at a half-empty jar of Nutella. The white telephone movies. The white telephone movies of the 1930s, glitzy, glossy dramas and comedies dripping with sentiment, are one of the predominant forms of motion pictures during the Mussolini regime until Shannon Weaver conceived of the perfect message as a very proper and discreet girl taking her calls. In the war film La Grande Illusion by Jean Renoir and starring Pierre Fresnay and Erich von Stroheim, the color of Rauffenstein's Winterborn office phone is white as a turnip. He is so badly injured that he can barely turn his head due to a vertebrae of metal. This is the most recent one in the series. I went earlier this year to the Lincoln Center. It had a screening of Vertigo with orchestration, and so I was able to kind of write a version or a poem in homage to that film. This is called Air. Jimmy Stewart's air of ambient findability in Vertigo and the 24/7 lure of accessibility tie him to his telephone as in a trance or spell. The chimeric margins that distance Madeline from the patched surface of real life are hard to bridge. Cute as a raisin, a wrinkled novelty, Midge had long ago lost interest in the ocean, the environment, and was out of touch with just about everybody, starting with her family. Friends will confirm that she'd been going on about Scotty forever without realizing how long it would take him to recover, or that so much would happen before he did. In his room, it was so quiet you could hear the hangers clinking next door or a shunt of air. Switching themes a little bit here, this is reading Proust on the train to New York City. The mauve September sea color of a favorite scarf is the loveliest part of Proust's In Search of Lost Time, or the patch of yellow wall from Vermeer's View of Delft that wedges a splendid sun-drenched townhouse roof between shaded walls, and a trivial detail maybe for some, but I suppose when all is said and done, we all have a version of the painting like Bergotte, who died in a grand old house hidden by a crosshatch of leaves after seeing the clouds one last time, now a tangent and opacity on the horizon. The clink of a spoon against a plate after the aperitif, or the feel of a napkin on his lips, may evoke the plumage of an ocean green blue as a peacock's tail. I prefer the cut-the-crap, no-nonsense world of Charlos, though Proust leaves him none the wiser, even sadder. Will Swann move in with Odette, or will he remain in the suburbs where the lack of emotional sustenance verges on the pathological? A few islands of friendship and camaraderie appear in the subway, on the sidewalk, on an elevator, or in a crowd, not so much as touching a shoulder. This is Tops and Bottles. This is an homage to the painter Morandi. The tops of bottles in a Morandi painting are perfectly pitched between acid green and storefront blue, a zone of fruitful endeavor which could run the gamut of long afternoons, only mildly inconvenienced by overcast skies or a passerby at dusk. I once valued an estate for the stripes in its awning, each a subtly different shade of brown. In the deep shadowed crevices and the mysterious softness of Morandi's bottles, the personal self is regarded as the Mont Blanc of romanticism, recessional, multiple, and open-ended like a wall-eyed luminosity, and set in the wainscoting of rooms, the newness of green otherwise so ordinary. A couple New York School type of poems. Philadelphia. Taking cabs to 2nd and Chestnut, to the Khyber, and then after hours at the South Street Diner with Dory and Rick at various locations in the Philly area during the early aughts. Bump, The Last Drop, Bob and Barbara's, Shampoo, Alana's, Dirty Frank's, 13th and Locust, a concentration of camp. Broad Street, or the Avenue of the Arts, aka the Avenue of the Tarts. But sometimes on a strange night, like tonight at 7:10 p.m., as the sun sets, the same kinds of people enter into one's life, but for a fleeting instant. Then they are lost like clouds that pass or recede into the background of the promenade. I don't like the winter days ending so early, the sky going pale, then dark. I look up to find the moon's brilliance in the lighted clouds lurking behind the trees and the water towers, and I'm reminded even here of where I am, and I'm exactly where I want to be. This one's called Word on the Street. In a hot, bright room in the city, late at night, taxis whisper in the snow, the irrepressible dialectic of history, 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Forgive us, our couch animals, herbs and piano bars, ping-pong tables without end and grad school repartee. Let us, if we may, apropos of nothing, say a single word, Coca-Cola, our greatest uplift to the world, so alluring, great tasting, and it has zing, like a soft drink that bites you back. That prickly feeling in the nose, the sensation of Coca-Cola, the sexy, poisonous sheen of billboards. When Balanchine arrived in America, he could get by with "Okay Kid," "Scram," and "One Swell Guy." Sartre could get through the night by alternating 2 phrases, scotch and soda, and why not? I actually plugged that into ChatGPT, and as I've been doing this for, interestingly enough, it gives you intelligent responses. It said that stanza was just to differentiate different views of philosophy of life, Balanchine and Sartre. So. And Frida and Uncle Charlie fled a war-torn Europe like a fly escaping the swatter. They settled on Avenue C, C for crazy and D for dead. Klaus Nomi opens up for Twisted Sister at the Starlight in Sayreville, New Jersey, culturally speaking, light years away from the East Village with its magnetic infrastructure. The word on the street is always a year ahead of the cops, whose euphemisms like planned shrinkage meant an uptick in crime, walls of garbage, broken porticos, blotches of speed, head and taillights. I'll read a few more in this section. How am I doing on time, Matt?
21 minutes.
Okay, I'll go for maybe
The videographer says.
another 5 or 6 minutes. Is that all right?
Sounds good.
Okay. Fencing. When I was 9, I was flipping through the dictionary in the F's, and I saw a guy in a white outfit with a sword, and I thought I could do that. Dad had his ways when I cleaned up my room, and then I'd have to buy back all my toys for a nickel each, and if I slept late, he'd pour cold water in my ears.
Ooh.
When my brother lost his memory after a fight, oh well, that's tough, I said. If only the self weren't such an endless loop, but instead an astral dynamic experience. Many times sentences lead us down loops and dark alleyways, sentences that will roll along like a lint remover, picking up all sorts of interesting things like a lingering love affair in Hiroshima Mon Amour, or the What's So Funny scene in Goodfellas, cocaine makes nothing happen, or episodes of Laverne and Shirley. One evening after drinks, I said to my brother, "Don't weep over sullen fruit." And then I opted to take the back alley instead of Main Street, slouch darting through an archipelago of shadows. The DSM-5 was a kind of dictionary, aka the Book of Woe, as if the bloody circumstances of my life could be shrink-wrapped into oxymorons like affordable housing. Pulling the evanescence of vapor clouds around my shoulders like a cloak, I go back to you, my cold father, my cold, mad father, how you still weary me. Go ahead, I say to myself some days, meet the deadline, turn the words over in their graves, lay down in darkness and wait like an animal for another day to come. Sojourn. To remember Greece is to commemorate a prior forgetfulness and the voyages of others, their lives blindly unraveling behind the curtains of a hospital like TV shows from another planet. When discussing the issue of taboo and Oedipus Rex, my students thought I meant Taibo, a calorie-burning exercise. Others thought it was a planet in a faraway galaxy similar to our own, or like the Earth seen from the moon, gibbous, squashed, half-shrouded in darkness, and almost ponderously ludic, as if playing a sluggard game of hide and seek. The spelling bee itself was a grind. It was too difficult to spell or swallow Oedipal, tucked in grief only by reactivating its meaning somewhere in Delphi, the temple of Apollo. On my last sojourn overseas, the gateway to Athens, the seaweed is as green as the head of Zeus, sea rocks from the islands, panel after panel, pieces of a mosaic festooned with grape leaf and pomegranates, amphoras, the red style on white. We hoped the sun would remain strong, but not this cruel. Notable was the elegant economy, towns perched upon the cliffs of Mykonos, all of Pitt's deranged fruit-bearing trees. Parmenides stopped worrying about the letters of a foreign alphabet in the evening sky, whose import could be found in no dictionary, but rather in the upward rising flocks of cranes. 20 years of Achilles throwing himself against the rocks brought joy to the enemy. One day we'll be able to read the genetic imprint of ants, the kinetic sea writings of penguins, or the delicate transient lyricism of lichen, cresses, and fungi that patch the dark brick walls of tombs and grow halos behind the bare bulbs of the lark's pitch of distraction, the flamingo's one-night stands, the coral reef's elegy. And I'll close with a elegy poem, an elegiac poem, but it's also a spring poem of sorts. So, okay. What will the whiteness of Duane Reade add to this world met with the agonies of death and decay? What candor? Who, if I cried out, would hear me among the aisles? And if someone were to unscrew all the salt shakers in Manhattan, would I be consumed with the soft terror of public spaces? Sounds coming from the checkout, but nobody moves. I fill a shopping cart with all the natural wonders of the world. After a once-in-a-thousand-year storm, an armada of shopping carts files back toward the edge of the parking lot. If the Ponte Venice of magnolia petals fringing the highway in the spring is mere detail, then so is the woman and the supermarket, whose orchid-colored turtleneck repeats an incandescent azalea blossom. The rose apricot pool of evening light and the steel blue mirror the airplanes overhead. The two reflecting pools glitter like jewels at the bottom of a cave where the north and south towers once stood. My eye extends rapidly and in a straight line to the plane opposite the oculus, a wedge of light tightly bound like the finest white feathers of a bird in flight. And gradually my eyes adjust as if stepping from a dark theater into the bright afternoon, and I see a vast plaza amid the dense tangle of streets and lights reflecting off the Hudson, vaulting into the sight, soaking up space with a watery glow. That same summer, during the summer of 2007, we lost two great directors in one fell swoop, Bergman and Antonini. Oh, that's it. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. I think my rain dance actually worked. We staved off the rain until
Yes.
late, so we're good.